In 1976, the UK baked. People remember the brown lawns, the blue skies, the garden hose bands, the paddling pools, and that feeling that summer had somehow broken loose from the normal rules of British weather and decided to stay. It has become this almost mythical reference point now. Every time there is a heat wave, somebody brings it up. We had this in 1976, and nobody made a big deal about it. Then the modern warning maps appear, all amber and red, and suddenly you have people asking why 30 degrees is being treated like a national emergency when their parents were apparently out getting sunburned in the backyard and having the time of their lives. And I get why that argument lands, because something does look strange about it. The same country that remembers 1976 as this glorious, endless summer now sees a few hot days arrive, with health alerts, advice about closing the curtains, warnings about public transportation, school closures, and people online arguing as though the weather presenter has personally declared war on barbecue season. So I wanted to know what actually changed here. Did people in the UK really just handle heat better in the 70s? Have the warnings become more dramatic? Has the weather changed in a way people do not quite see because they are comparing it with a memory instead of a record? Or has a forecast somehow turned into one of those things where everybody has to pick a side before they have even looked at the evidence? The first thing I found is that 1976 was not some harmless little summer that we have all been lied to about. It was genuinely extraordinary. Temperatures reached 35.9 degrees Celsius, about 97 degrees Fahrenheit, in Cheltenham, England. There were 16 days where parts of the UK went above 32 degrees Celsius or 90 degrees Fahrenheit. The heat was persistent, but so was the drought. The ground had been drying out for months, water supplies were under pressure, agriculture was suffering, and the government appointed a minister for drought. There were water restrictions, standpipes in some communities, and all the things that happen when a country built around the assumption that it will probably rain eventually realizes that perhaps it will not. So people did worry in 1976. They just worried in a different world. They had newspapers, radio, and television. They did not have a little glowing rectangle in their hand that could show them an alarming map, followed immediately by someone calling the map propaganda, followed immediately by somebody else calling that person an idiot, followed by a 40-minute video about aircraft trails over Hampshire. The weather could still disrupt your life, but it had not yet become this giant rolling referendum on whether you trusted the government, the media, science, your own eyes, or the guy on Facebook who says he has been doing his research. That difference matters because memory is a very funny thing. We do not remember a summer as data. We remember it as a mood. We remember the song that was on the radio, how late it stayed light, the smell of hot grass, the fact that we were 10 years old and had absolutely no responsibilities beyond not getting stung by a wasp. When people say the summer of 1976 was hotter, they can be remembering something real because it was an intense and prolonged heat and drought event. But a single memory of heat cannot answer every question about what is happening now, because there are several different ways a summer can be extraordinary. In 2022, the UK reached 40.3 degrees Celsius, about 104.5 degrees Fahrenheit for the first time on record. That is a completely different kind of headline. Then, in 2025, the UK recorded its warmest summer by average temperature. That summer did not surpass 1976 on every measure. 1976 still stands out for its persistent high daytime temperatures. But 2025 was warm in a different way. The heat was sustained across the season, and the nights were unusually warm too. And warm nights are one of those things that sound almost pleasant until you think about what they actually mean for people. If the temperature drops overnight, your house gets a chance to release some heat. Your body gets a chance to recover. If it stays hot through the night, especially in an apartment that has been absorbing heat all day, there is no reset button. A person who is healthy, has water, lives in a cool home, and can avoid the hottest part of the day may experience a heat wave as an inconvenience or even a treat. Somebody older, somebody with heart or lung problems, somebody taking certain medication, a baby in a poorly ventilated room, a construction worker, a delivery driver, or someone caring for a frail relative is living through the exact same temperature in a very different way. That was the point where I started looking more closely at the warning maps because they are probably the thing people react to most strongly. You see a huge patch of red over the UK, and it is hard not to read it emotionally. Red has a very clear meaning in our brains. Red means stop. Red means danger. Red means somebody somewhere is about to tell you not to do something you quite fancied doing. But the heat health alerts in the UK are not simply maps of temperature. They are designed around expected impacts. They take into account the chances of harm, warm nights, pressure on health and care services, indoor temperatures, and possible disruption to things people rely on. An alert is meant to help hospitals, care homes, local authorities, and vulnerable people prepare. It is not supposed to mean every person inside the red area is in immediate danger, or that you need to sit in a dark room staring suspiciously at your ceiling fan. The trouble is that a system can have a sensible purpose and still communicate badly. Most people are not reading the technical guidance behind an alert. They are seeing the color, the headline, and whatever interpretation happens to be attached to it when it reaches their feed. A map might be technically correct and still leave people feeling as though they are being emotionally managed. If you want the public to trust a warning, they need to understand what they are looking at. They need to know whether the map is showing heat, unusual heat, health risk, the likelihood of disruption, or a specific danger to certain groups. Those are not interchangeable things, even though they can look identical once somebody has screenshotted them and posted them next to the words "here we go again." And once I started noticing that gap between what an alert is meant to say and what people think it is saying, a lot of the online arguments started making more sense. Not because every criticism is correct, obviously. Some of it is wildly off the rails, but because people are often responding to the version of the message they received, not the one the agency thought it had sent. You can see that in the conversations about cloud seeding, geoengineering, and chemtrails. There is a tendency to lump all of those things together and treat them as either totally imaginary or proof that somebody is secretly controlling the weather over the UK. Neither response gets us very far. Cloud seeding is real. Some countries have used it to try to influence rain, snow, or hail in particular places. Geoengineering is a real scientific and policy debate, especially around proposals to reflect more sunlight away from the Earth. It raises enormous questions about power, consent, unintended consequences, and who gets to decide which part of the planet gets a little cooler and which part might get less rain. Those are serious things to talk about. They deserve scrutiny precisely because they are serious. But a real field of research is not evidence that somebody is secretly manipulating the British weather. The UK government says it does not use cloud seeding or solar radiation management and has no plans to do so. The Met Office says there is no evidence for chemtrail claims. Contrails can linger and spread in the sky because of atmospheric conditions, which is why they can look strange and dramatic without being evidence of a covert operation. The reason those claims keep finding an audience is more interesting than simply saying people are gullible. People have watched institutions make mistakes. They have watched politicians avoid questions and blatantly lie, watched news organizations chase attention, watched experts disagree, watched official messaging become confusing or patronizing, and watched social media turn every uncertainty into a tribal fight. It is not irrational to want clarity. It is not irrational to ask who benefits from a policy, a message, or a particular way of presenting risk. The problem comes when suspicion becomes so automatic that every official statement is taken as proof of a plot. At the same time, institutions can make this worse when they treat every skeptical question as an act of moral failure. Somebody asking why the map is red, what baseline is being used, or who the warning is intended for should be able to get a straight answer without being made to feel as though they have wandered into a forbidden area of thought. People are more likely to trust a system that explains itself clearly than one that expects trust to arrive fully formed. And that, I think, is why the weather now feels so much bigger than weather. A hot day in the UK used to be this shared national event. Everyone complained that it was too hot, then complained when it rained, then discussed whether it counted as hot enough to wear shorts. There was no shortage of opinions, obviously. This is the UK. But those opinions did not automatically place you in a political tribe. Now, a warning can feel like a test of character. If you take it seriously, someone may decide you are alarmist. If you question its tone, someone may decide you are denying reality. If you mention geoengineering, people may assume you are either a brave independent thinker or a conspiracy theorist before you have even finished your sentence. That is a terrible environment for thinking clearly, because people stop listening for information and start listening for signals about which side they are supposed to be on. The summer of 1976 was real. The drought was real. The disruption was real. The heat the UK has experienced in recent years is real too, and it is happening against a climate that has changed since 1976. Heat health warnings can save people from harm, especially people whose risk is invisible to the loudest voices in the argument. The design of those warnings matters, because unclear communication creates space for confusion and distrust. And the questions people bring to all of this are not always foolish, even when some of the answers they end up with are unsupported. Maybe that is what has changed most. The weather did not become political because people suddenly developed strong opinions about the sun. It became political because trust has become political, and now everything that passes through that broken system comes out carrying a label. The strange thing is that the sky is not asking us to join a team. It is just doing what weather has always done, creating risks for some people, relief for others, and endless opportunities for everybody else to talk about it. I want to know what you think. When you look at the heat warnings in the UK, the memories of 1976, and the conversation around geoengineering, what do you genuinely believe is going on? Does the climate record change how you see it? Do the maps and messaging make you more suspicious? And can we talk about that without writing off everyone who has questions as a conspiracy theorist, or everyone who does not share those questions as delusional? Put your view below, but tell us why you hold it and what evidence could make you rethink it.